What's up YouTube, this is Luis Joel and welcome back to my channel. Today we're doing brisket in the Masterbuilt Electric Smoker. As always, this recipe is super easy to make, so yeah, let's get into it. So what I got here is a 12-pound USDA prime brisket that I bought from Costco. You want to go ahead and get yourself a nice sharp boning knife, and we're going to take it out of the packaging. Make sure not to get any of the blood on the counter. Personally, I like to wear gloves when I'm working with raw meat. And with big hunks of beef like brisket, you never want to wash your meat in the sink just because you may contaminate your entire sink and anything else that you put in there. I'm not going to show you the entire process of trimming a brisket. Every YouTuber has a different way of trimming their briskets, but I will go over some of the key things that I like to do. I like to remove a lot of the decal fat. I like to take off a lot of the silver skin on the meat side, and I like to trim off some of the rough edges on the side of the brisket just to, make sure the brisket's a little more round. As you can see, we've got beautiful marbling just because this is a prime brisket. Definitely take your time when doing this and use a sharp knife. It just makes your life so much easier. If you see here, there's like a very thin part of the flat. I like to take that off just because it makes the brisket cook a lot more evenly. I'm gonna trim the fat cap down to about 1/4 inch. It doesn't have to be perfect. I tend to take out a little bit more than most people just because I don't like too much fat in my brisket. As you can see, there's still bald spots in the fat cap, but it doesn't bother me. The rubs I'm using are Holy Cow and Holy Gospel from Meat Church. You're just gonna want to sprinkle an even layer of both out. Mines were running out, so I ended up using the whole bottle for both of them. And I'm gonna let this sit in the fridge overnight and let it marinate, just so that way I get more flavor. Today we're gonna be cooking with the Masterbuilt Electric Smoker. I love using this unit. It makes cooking briskets so easy and so convenient. I'm just gonna go ahead and clear out some of the ashtray. I'm gonna set the smoker to about 230 to 235. We're gonna let this preheat for about 30 to 40 minutes. Because it's the next day, I went and took out the brisket from the fridge, and before I put it in the smoker, I'm gonna go ahead and add some of this Morton's Tender Quick. This is just a curing salt that allows the brisket to get that nice pink smoke ring. The Masterbuilt Electric Smoker doesn't produce a smoke ring in the unit just because there's not enough oxygen in the chip tray to produce one, so I'm just doing this to kind of cheat. Pecan is my favorite smoking wood, but you could use apple, you could use cherry or mesquite or hickory, doesn't matter. We're just gonna add some wood chips to the tray, and we're gonna put this back in the smoker to let this preheat and start smoking up. Now that we got some smoke, we're gonna go ahead and load up the brisket. I like to add the brisket on the top rack just so that way it gets as much airflow as possible. I'm not adding any water to the water pan just because I'm gonna get enough moisture in the cooking chamber from the brisket. I'm also going to leave the vent wide open so I get plenty of airflow, and I bumped up the temperature to about 250. One trick I like to do to create more airflow is leaving the chip loader sticking out of the opening. This allows a little more oxygen to enter the cooking chamber without making the chips completely ignite into flames. After about 4 hours, we're going to go ahead and check on the brisket. As you can see, we're starting to develop a little bit of bark. I'm gonna start spritzing it with 50-50 apple cider vinegar and water. And when you're spritzing, just make sure to only get the dry parts. You don't want to soak the entire brisket. We're gonna let this rock out for another 2 hours. And my chip tray is looking a little burnt out, so I'm gonna add a little more wood chips. And with this unit, you definitely want to add wood chips about every 30 to 40 minutes. We're gonna leave this in and we're gonna let it sit for another 2 hours before we start spritzing again. Alright, after about the 6-hour mark, we're actually starting to get a little bit more bark. As you can see, the brisket's definitely getting darker. And just take care to spritz just the drier, crusty bits. At about the 9-hour mark, the brisket's developed enough color and bark that I like, so I'm gonna go ahead and take it out of the smoker and get it ready to wrap. And be very careful not to ruin the bark that you worked so hard to create. Same as always guys, I'm gonna wrap my brisket in 2 sheets of butcher paper, and I'm gonna drizzle it with some smoked beef tallow that I made from the shavings from earlier. Maybe in one of these videos I'll show you guys how to make smoked beef tallow. But like I said before, I didn't want to make this video too long. Now make sure you wrap that up nice and tight so nothing then leaks out. Now I'm going to be finishing this in the oven at about 250 degrees, and to keep me from overcooking it, I'm going to monitor the temperature with this wire probe. I'm going to leave it in the oven until it hits about 195, and then I'm going to start checking for tenderness. Once the brisket hit 196, I started checking for tenderness, and it definitely was pretty tender. So yeah, this brisket was ready to come off. The probe was just slipping right through both in the point and in the flat. We're going to go ahead and take the brisket out. We're going to let this cool down to about 180 degrees, and then we're going to wrap it back up. We're going to put this in a cooler and let it rest overnight. Okay guys, and after all your patience and waiting, you get rewarded with this beautiful smoked brisket. Now don't forget to save all the beef tallow that rendered off the brisket and pour it on top of it like this, just so that way you could get a nice beautiful presentation. Now unfortunately guys, I lost the footage of when I first cut into the brisket, which kinda sucks because that's the money shot of the whole cook, but that's okay. I promise I'll get it next time. But either way, this brisket came out so juicy and tender, and to steal a line from Matt Pittman from Meat Church, I'm not even mad at it. Now definitely get yourself a nice sharp slicing knife just because it makes carving the brisket so much easier. They say you're supposed to get very thin slices, but I guess I tend to carve on the thicker end. You can really clearly see that smoke ring that you get from the curing salts. It just gives it that beautiful Texas barbecue look that everybody always strives for. And it's so tender that honestly you could just pull it apart. It's just melts in your mouth. And when you get to the point, you want to turn it 90 degrees and continue slicing vertically. Again, my slices aren't too thin. I tend to carve on the thicker side. Don't mind me. Now you don't want to forget the ends. You could go ahead and turn those into burnt ends if you want. Now a lot of people like the point end of the brisket. Personally, it's too fatty for me, but I could see why people love it. It's just so tender and juicy. Well guys, there's only one thing left to do now. Just like my pulled pork videos, I'm going to keep this nice and simple. I'm going to get a nice potato bun. I'm going to lay down a few slices of brisket. I'm going to drizzle a little bit of my own homemade barbecue sauce. Well, there you have it guys. Barbecue smoked brisket made in the Masterbuilt Electric smoker. If you guys like this video, don't forget to like and subscribe, and I'll catch you guys in the next video. Peace out.